gathering is going nowhere.
Even though I think they are trying to appeal, but there are some complications with that. We'll have to keep following the story and see what happens. Jonathan O'Connor, there's been a lot of news around the possibility of a new Washington Redskins stadium in recent days. Let's start in D.C. What's going on?
Well, Mayor Bowser and the team's owner, Dan Snyder, have taken this sort of unique strategy here where they've tucked some stadium language into a federal budget bill in the hope that Republicans in the House and Senate and President Trump will approve in quick order, granting the district really long-term control of that 190 acres where RFK Stadium is. There's sort of two ways of looking at this. One is D.C. should have more control over its land, and the federal government should have less control over, the important places in the city. The other is that if this does go through, which we should know in the next week or week and a half here, the city will have the control of the land in a really kind of superseding many of the traditional ways we manage land. The zoning process would be superseded. All the traditional reviews we have for development in the city would be superseded. And I think that sort of avoiding the normal discussion we would have about such a big transfer has really rubbed some people the wrong way.
Dan Snyder, Muriel Bowser et al. Are pushing to get this deal through in a spending bill in Congress, as you pointed out, that would need to get passed by the end of the year before a new Congress is seated in January. Why?
Well, the political dynamic could change come January. The House will go to the Democrats, obviously. And Republicans in Congress have been very willing to work with the Trump administration on doing something like this. I mean, people have to remember that RFK Stadium is on federally owned National Park Service land. It does not look like a park. Obviously, it's mostly parking lots and an empty stadium, but it is National Park Service land. And traditionally, the Park Service does not like to just give up parkland for real estate development or to private real estate developers. I mean, think of all the national parks we treasure that I'm sure developers would love to get a hold of.
But does this proposal that's been trying to be inserted into the federal budget, does it wipe out really all the zoning approvals and the mayor and could build a stadium?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
you
yeah.
Sure? Because I hadn't read that. But part of the deal is whether you like the stadium or not. Someone reported back in March of 2017, a reporter, Jonathan O'Connor, reported Mayor Bowser sent a letter to President Trump back then saying, look, we want control of all the federal lands and basically not necessary for the federal government. That's the RFK site, 190 acres. That's the 3 golf courses, Langston, East Potomac Park, and Rock Creek Park. It's Franklin Square downtown and other pieces of land. The mayor says the city is growing, it needs the land, and we can run it better than the federal government, which sits on it. The Park Service, as everyone knows, is broke. So as I understand it, this move, which does have Dan Snyder's support, which could be one of the reasons people don't like it, is it would allow the city to control the land, but it would not guarantee a stadium. It would just to make it a lot easier to get one. But here's the deal. Councilmember Allen, Ward 6, doesn't want a stadium at all. Councilmember Grosso doesn't want a stadium at all. But to do anything on that land, it's almost 200 acres, the city has to have control of the land. Because if you want to build housing, if you want retail, grocery stores, any of that, the city has to have permission because the lease from the Park Service only allows sports and recreational uses.
Right.
How did the president respond to Mayor Bowser's request when she made it?
To my knowledge, there's never been a public response from President Trump.
Did she mention that he might be able to build a hotel on that land?
No, but part of the plan is the discussions. Nothing's set in stone. But the people on the East Capitol Hill want amenities that are available in other parts of the city. Many of them don't want a stadium, but they do want hotels and restaurants and playgrounds and schools maybe and subsidized housing and market rate housing. They want that area to be developed so they can use it.
Is the stadium likely to be a sticking point if the Democrats were in control of the House of Representatives, which they will be next year?
Well, yes, during the Obama administration, the Interior Secretary, whose name I don't recall at this moment, she said, I don't like the Redskins. There are two big sticking points, in my view, whether you're for the stadium or not, as the Post editorial page said this morning. Let the city have control of the land and then decide what to do. The sticking points are the hatred for Dan Snyder, the owner. In May will be 20 20 years he is on this team, and many people think he's run it into the ground and shouldn't get a dime of support money. Everyone agrees, including Jack Evans, the most vociferous proponent of the stadium, that the Redskins will have to build their own stadium, but the city would spend millions of dollars on land preparation.
Jonathan O'Connell, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan got into the game as well this week with a move to try to keep the stadium in Prince George's County, also focused on federal land. What's his pitch?
Well, Larry Hogan is trying something similar in some ways. He's also trying to acquire federal park land at Oxen Cove, right by National Harbor, right on the other side of the river there. His plan we know very little about, despite the fact that he sort of gave a little bit of a hint about it this week. He has proposed a land swap with the Interior Department in which he would acquire, the state of Maryland would acquire that land in exchange for some Civil War battlefield land in Western Maryland, the location of which is still undisclosed. The details of this are completely undisclosed. It's very difficult for me to see. I mean, there's just so many steps between, acquiring that land by the state, going through the environmental reviews required of allowing a stadium to be developed there, and the various massive amount of infrastructure and roads you are going to need, all to build a stadium where there's no metro.
And to build one that's 15 miles from the current stadium.
I mean, if you look around FedEx Field in Prince George's right now, you don't see a whole lot of economic benefit that they got from having an NFL stadium all this time. So I could see why people in Prince George's are skeptical of wanting to, really support another one.
We got a tweet from Love Legislation who says, "No new stadium until the name of the Washington, D.C. football name is changed." Mic drop.
Well,
the other concern that Democrats in Congress seem to have is the precedent this was set for the long-term use of federal land.
Sure.
What's at stake? What's at stake here in that regard?
Well, as we talked about, the national park land is something that the country is used to protecting. The Park Service, on the one hand, its job is to sort of protect and make sure that national park lands are not, just free and open to real estate developers. On the other hand, the National Park Service does not maintain some of their parks in D.C. very well. As Tom pointed out, some of the golf courses could be a lot better, Franklin Square could be a lot better, et cetera. And there's an interesting overlap here between the priorities of Mayor Bowser, Democrat, and Ryan Zinke, the Secretary of the Interior, who is a Republican and seems sort of open to privatizing more areas of government than a Democrat probably would be. And in this case, there may be some overlap in priorities there because Bowser would like to see local control of these things, and Zinke seems up for participating in some of that. You mentioned the golf courses and the tennis center. Zinke has a request out on the street right now for parties who are interested in maybe participating in that and somehow redeveloping them or improving them.
If nothing gets done, if the city doesn't get control of the land, then essentially the Park Service will have, 10,000 parking spaces, a dead stadium that's been there since 1960 and been empty for several years now. The soccer team left. So nothing will happen. So I think the most important thing, I think, is people say, let the city have the land and then have the debate about whether you have the stadium. The problem is if this proposal in Congress short-circuits the process to get a stadium, then that's another whole can of worms.
And what is Ward 6 Councilmember Charles Allen saying? Is RFK, I always get confused about this. Is RFK now in Ward 6 or is it still in Ward 7? It's still in Ward 7.
It's in Vince Gray's ward.
Why is the Ward 6 Councilmember so?
Well, because he represents most of Capitol Hill where people live there. I think Kingman Park might be part of Ward 7. But there's a lot of people who live there, and just like the Convention Center, just like the Verizon Center downtown, now the Capital One Center, just like the baseball stadium, a lot of people, although there weren't many people living near the baseball stadium site, the neighbors of the Convention Center opposed it endlessly. People opposed the Verizon Center when its MCI Center when it was being built, thinking it was going to overwhelm their neighborhoods. And people think the stadium is a waste of money, people who are opposing it. But I think there's going to be a fuller discussion about it. And if the city gets control of the land, there will be a big battle over what this team may or may not do. But the name is very serious. But the council a decade ago or more, I think when Carol Schwartz was on the council, all 13 members at the time voted saying, change the name. We don't want to have anything to do with you coming back to the city unless you change the name. But every mayor since Tony Williams has been negotiating privately and working hard to bring the team back. Every mayor since Tony Williams.
And, of course, a football stadium is only in use for football between 8 and 12 times a year.
This would be something different. It would be about 60,000 dome stadium, which would be used for other things other than sport.
Well, see, I got to stop you here, Tom. I got to stop you here because we got to talk about an NFL stadium. You get 8 or 10 home games a year. Maybe you get 5 concerts. You get like Taylor Swift and U2. I don't know, a couple others.
Oh,
And until
but these ancillary development, I'm not for it, but I'm just saying that, as you know,
I hate to break in the middle of this argument, but as you know, this is the last day of our year-end membership campaign.
It's not an argument.
And so we have to get people
observation.
So we have to get people to participate in that. So, Jonathan O'Connor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate it.
We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll be talking with Nancy Navarro, the Montgomery County Council President. You can start calling for her now, 800-433-8850. I'm Kojo Namdi. Welcome back to the Politics Hour with Tom Sherwood. He's our resident analyst and a contributing writer for Washington City Paper. Joining us in studio is Nancy Navarro. She's the president of the Montgomery County Council. Nancy Navarro, thank you for joining us and congratulations.
Thank you so much, Kojo. It's great to be here.
If you have questions or comments for Nancy Navarro, start calling now, 800-433-8850. Go to our website, kojoshow.org. Watch the live video stream of this broadcast, and you can ask a question or make a comment there. Shoot us a tweet at Kojo Show or email to kojo@wamu.org. Before we get to Montgomery County, Tom Sherwood, let's talk Virginia a little bit. The Atlantic Coast Pipeline seems to have run into another problem, this time from a panel of federal judges rejecting permits, noting that the Forest Service had raised proper environmental questions early in its permit process. And the judges say those issues were suddenly and mysteriously assuaged in time to meet a private company's deadlines. This all has to do with crossing the Appalachian Trail.
Yes, the ruling by the panel of judges was pretty blunt. And Dominion Energy now, which is pushing the $7 billion project, of course, says it will appeal the decision. But this is the pipeline that will go right through the heart of Virginia, from West Virginia right down to North Carolina. But the judges even quoted Dr. Seuss saying, "We trust the United States Forest Service to speak for the trees have no tongues." I mean, that's really unusual for a court case. But this is a big setback for the pipeline. People had thought that Governor Ralph Northam wasn't doing enough to oppose it and maybe doing too much to allow it to go forward. But the court was pretty clear that the Forest Service did not account for federal lands that could be impacted, I hate the word impacted, could be affected by this pipeline, and just told them you can't do it.
But
so
there's another appeal coming, so this is
always an appeal.
So the story is
That's
one
our court system.
we'll be following. Nancy Navarro, this is your second stint as council president in Montgomery County. You served in that role from December 2012 to December 2013. This is a very different council, though. What have term limits, which kicked in this time around for many council members, what have term limits meant for the council?
Well, most certainly it's meant that now we have 4 new council members. I think there was a combination probably of the fact that, a former county executive Leggett had announced that he wouldn't run. And so, as you know, many of my colleagues ran for that seat, as well as term limits. And then we have public campaign financing that I think all of that came together for a very energetic and robust primary and resulted in 4 new council members.
How does the term limit law affect you?
I am just starting my last term.
Third and last term.
Yes, although, there was a very interesting wrinkle to the proposal that passed where on social media it was very clear that there were certain organizations that were very anti-immigrant were championing the certain particular language that was just for me. And, basically saying that a partial service of a term would count as a full term, which would have cut my time short. But then there was no definition of a full term. It's very technical. Anyway, there was another ballot question, and now I'm there until 2022.
And as president, this is the second time, you're selected by the other council members to be president. For all the progressive things going on, people look up in this 9-member council, you are the only female, the only woman.
I'm the one,
when you first joined the council in 2009, there were 4 women on the council.
Yes.
What's going on?
Wow, that's a very good question. I mean, I'm the last woman standing. I think that perhaps, again, the fact is that, my new colleagues, the majority of them were people that had either run before. I mean, you had Gabe Albornoz, who is director of recreation. I think name recognition played a role in some way because there were just so many people running in the primary. But we had a really amazing group of very qualified women that now I think, have this experience. And I'm sure we will see many of them running again in 2022. And perhaps see a totally different result. So that's something to look forward to.
Well, if they run in 2022, they're likely going to have petitions before they are able to qualify as candidates, because one of the first things this new council did was to discuss a bill that would require county executive and council candidates to gather petition signatures to appear on the ballot. This after an incredibly crowded Democratic primary that saw 33 people running for 4 at-large council seats. Do you approve of that, and why is there not already a petition requirement?
You know, I'm not really sure that I am that enthusiastic about this particular proposal. As I said, I think we had a very unique situation this last time. But in some ways, you know, we spent a lot of time talking about how do we encourage, especially more people of color to run. And to add something else to that seems to me perhaps not necessary. Nonetheless, you know, when you're going to participate in the public campaign finance, you do have to reach a certain threshold, which I think already also helps in terms of viability. But I don't know. We haven't taken a formal position on that particular proposal. I understand some of the, you know, impetus behind it, but I think this was just a very unique circumstance this last election.
It does, as petitions in the city, it does require you and your team to go out and meet people and get them to sign, although it causes lots of headaches in various campaigns if they don't do it properly. I was at the lunch it was just last week. It seems like a year ago. Things move so fast.
Tell me about
the Montgomery Council had a lunch for media, and lots of people came. It was a good turnout. I asked you then, I'll ask you now, one of your former council members is now the county executive, Mark Elrich. And I ask you, given his reputation for sometimes being on the short end of 8-to-1 votes and sticking in a tough way to his positions, how would he be working as a county executive? There's been a couple of things. He's appointed some people. He's renewed people from Ike Leggett's, the previous county executive. I think he's been talking to you. What's the early report card on Mark Elrich's attempts to reach out to the council members?
Sure. You know, I would give him an A in terms of his you know, approach thus far with reaching out, trying to be collaborative, and really wanting to hear out what's happening. But the reality is that, of course, this is the honeymoon stage. I mean, when we come back in January is when things are going to, you know, start in essence, and that's when we're going to figure out this rhythm. He has been very vocal about his approach to definitely work super closely with the council, and I think that it's a very important approach. I think this is how we're able to get things done in a very productive fashion. So I look forward to that.
But you specifically threw up an asterisk over his first appointments. He named a chief administrative officer and a budget director and a recreation director. But there were no minorities, unless Rich Madaleno is a gay person. That's, I guess, a minority. But your concern was the reflection of the county on the various county jobs. Yeah. He does say he takes it very seriously, racial diversity very seriously, but you are watching to see who's next.
I am. I mean, you know, I just have some figures here. You know, 55% of county residents are a racial or ethnic minority, 41% non-English speakers at home. And so I am a very data-driven person. I look at numbers and I look at our responsibility to respond to the needs of our constituents. And this is who our constituents are. So if you believe in outcomes-based decision-making, then you have to make sure that those at the very top of this administration reflect the community. I mean, because this is how you're going to be able to understand exactly what do those programs, the design of those programs, the decision-making around budgets, how is that going to truly respond to the needs. And we have a lot of disparities in Montgomery County that a lot of people may not know about. And so that's why I want to be, you know, very bold around this.
Disparities
this
in terms of social services and
education,
housing, everything across the board.
Oh, yeah, education disparities, access to health care, you know, income inequality, all of those are very much present in Montgomery County. And so, again, this is something that we have discussed a lot, and you know, Mark has always been very involved in these conversations and very vocal about it. So, you know, this is a really good opportunity for him to really move ahead with this type of decision making and with those folks on the top.
Let's move on to a specific issue: climate change. Here's Jeff in Poolesville, Maryland. Jeff, you're on the air. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm actually in Germantown, but that's okay. I just want to ask Nancy, since you voted for the climate emergency resolution, and since an emergency does call for immediate and strong action, what do you plan to do to follow through on the resolution and actually fight climate change?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, we have we did pass the bill that created a position so that we can have somebody And I think that's a very important position, a policy officer, as well as many of the different bills and programs that we have approved in order to make Montgomery County government as efficient as possible when it comes to sustainability and respect for our environment, as well as many votes that we have made on land use that have protected, especially our waterways and things like that. So I think that is, in that way, we're moving ahead. Once again, I think once Mark Elrich is, there and is settled with all of his appointments, et cetera, we're going to be able to work together to push this agenda even more. We did try, and I was working very closely with former Councilmember Berliner on this issue of, divesting and looking at our investment portfolio in fossil fuels, and we're able to, I think, make some headways. But there is definitely a blueprint, and I feel very strongly that we're going to be able to address that.
Your turn.
Well, one of the environmental issues is a quality of life issue is transportation. I know Mark Elrich has told the governor he thinks that they ought to be looking at fixing the American Legion Bridge rather than adding reversible lanes or more lanes to I-270. The pollution generated by the hundreds of thousands, millions of cars over the year, that's a major issue. Do you have a sense where you are and what needs to be done to unstuck Montgomery County?
Well, we spent a lot of time discussing this and adopting master plans that, in my opinion, are forward thinking, but also acting. And of course, it's no secret that this is a council that has always prioritized transit, which is why we, just broke ground on the Route 29 BRT line as a start point, as a starting point.
Transit, right?
Yeah, bus rapid transit. But we also understand that, there's some capacity issues in 270 and 495. And we're
Hold that thought for a second, because the capacity issues on 270 and 495 are what we're going to get to after we take this short break for our year-end membership campaign, asking you to become a member of WAMU. If you want to join this conversation with Nancy Navarro, start calling now, 800-433-8850, because we'll be right back. You can shoot us a tweet at Kojo Show or email to kojo@wamu.org. I'm Kojo Namdi. Welcome back to the Politics Hour with Tom Sherwood. He's our resident analyst and a contributing writer for Washington City Paper. We're talking with Nancy Navarro. She's the president of the Montgomery County Council. If you have questions or comments for Nancy Navarro, call us at 800-433-8850. We were talking when we left off about I-270 and the Beltway. In his inaugural address, County Executive Mark Elrich said of the Capital Beltway, quoting here, "Note to the governor, no Beltway widening." Indeed, the plan to widen the Capital Beltway has been controversial in Montgomery County. What do you want to see happen to it, and who should have a say?
Well, the county council understands that there are, of course, significant issues with capacity both on 270 and 495. And we have been on record saying that we would prefer, if there were to be widening, that it would be an addition of 2 lanes in each way, and that can be also reversible in peak hours. But with a caveat that obviously there are certain areas, especially in 495, that the right-of-way there, it can be very compromised. And so we do not support any particular widening that is going to affect anything further than that right-of-way. And hospitals like Holy Cross and people who live in that part of the county specifically, people are very concerned about what can occur. So we're still in that conversation, obviously, with SHA and, our delegation.
State Highway Administration.
State Highway Administration, because they have a number of options, that they have put forth, but they have not really tailored that down or reduced those options yet. And so right now we're in that mode of being as vocal as we can, working with our delegations, with our delegation in Annapolis, to be very clear about what we would like to see. We also would like to, consider multimodal treatments as well, because at the end of the day, for us, it's about how do you move more people in the most efficient way. But in that, it's been a little frustrating because we have not received, enough information. Our planning board also has been very involved, but we were going to continue to be unified in that.
Let me
messaging.
ask you this question about that. What is the Montgomery County role? Does the council have to vote on what changes would be made to I-495 and I-270? Could the governor's administration just go forward with it?
Steamroll over the county.
I didn't want to use that word.
Let me just say that it's a collaborative approach, but we don't
legally. You cannot veto something the governor wants to do on 495 or 270.
Correct.
Except that State Delegate Alfred Carr Jr. has introduced a bill that would require state officials to get Montgomery County's approval before they can build a toll road through it. How do you feel about that legislation?
It's something that we are looking at, and we did have a preliminary discussion on the council about that. I know that at least one of my colleagues wants to understand that a little bit more, Councilmember Reamer. He is a little bit worried about whether that hurts us in terms of leverage instead of helping us. So we are looking at that particular proposal, trying to see whether this will, position us in a place of strength. But I'm really hopeful, I would say, that Governor Hogan understands the importance of what Montgomery County has expressed, and I really am hopeful that we can work this out and that he would respect the wishes of those residents and also the leadership of the county.
We had a conversation with Councilmember Reamer and the Alfred Carr, the delegate, earlier this week. I think it was on Tuesday. You can go into our archives and hear that conversation. Here's Nathaniel in Rockville. Nathaniel, your turn.
Yes, hello, Councilmember Navarro. First of all, I want to congratulate you for what is a very successful career. I've followed your career ever since you were a school board member, and thank you for being inclusive and just a very thorough leader. So I want to say that first. But my question points towards this. After what has been what some would categorize as a very bitter and divisive election for county executive, and we had so many people running for county council, the results clearly point to the fact that the residents of Montgomery County have different perspectives as to what direction they want the county to go and what things they want to have done. So my question is this: as the county council president, have you had any conversations thus far with with County Executive Elrich, or do you intend to, in order to perhaps ramp up the existing program that the council has in place for town hall meetings and also do listening sessions. I think now more than
because
ever,
as he has pointed out, it was a very difficult race that was had, and there were a lot of arguments about whether or not Mark Elrich is really business-friendly enough, and I guess he wants to know exactly how you are going to try to achieve with county residents some common understanding of how development should take place.
Sure. Thank you, Nathaniel, for that question. Let me just say that, I believe that this particular election was all about change management. We're at a crossroads in Montgomery County right now, and perhaps this is why the election, if you look at it very closely, there was a lot of feedback around what people wish for. What I can say is that I think as a council, we have worked so diligently to set the stage, both in terms of respecting the different types of areas of the county, geographic areas, but we have moved forward with this notion of smart growth around transit-oriented development. We have set the stage for that. I'm very proud of what we have done in my part of the district. For example, I've led, the efforts for, the White Oak, the Viva White Oak redevelopment, also revitalization in Wheaton, because we need to expand our tax base in every corner of the county. So I feel that we have all the ingredients in place, and I feel like this council is a council, especially with the new council members, that understands that and is ready to take all of those ingredients and take it to the next level. I've also had a lot of conversations with, Executive Elrich about the importance of expanding our tax base, because you can have a lot of great ideas about how to address our, needs and our growing needs and the growth in poverty. But if you don't have, a revenue stream, and if you're not expanding your tax base, you will not be successful. So I feel very good about in terms of where we are and where we're going. I think that he has had a lot of listening sessions. The council has a number of town halls throughout the year. But believe you me, our constituents are not shy about letting us know what the priorities are and where we need to go. And so I'm ready to, roll up my sleeves with my colleagues and take us in a direction that is sustainable, but also addresses issues of growth.
One really good thing is there is money for school construction. The governor is proposing, because of the referendum, that the initiative that said casino profits must go to education. Can't replace education money, must additionally go to education. The governor is proposing, I think it's $1.9 billion more in school construction projects. He says 90% of the backlog of things that need to be done will be done. It's in addition to some other money that's already billions for schools. That's the capital fund. Montgomery County is growing. It needs school money. Where do you see this? How much of this money do you think you'll get for Montgomery County and the desperate need for school construction and repair?
Well, let me tell you that it's no secret that we are the largest school system, and we do have quite a number of urgent needs around alleviating school overcrowding. And so in addition to that, our capital budget, we do know that our debt service is such that we have got to ramp that back. So this is very good news on that end. We have not received the specific details of how the allocation is going to be made, in terms of all the jurisdictions. But of course, this is always, welcome news. At the same time, we also have to look at, some conversations that are taking place with the Kerwin Commission, because not only do we have facility needs.
Just so people know, that's the commission about school funding going forward that has to report in January.
They're looking for a new school funding formula for the state.
Right. Yes. But, as I said, not only do we have capacity needs in terms of the facilities, but we also have needs for the operating requests and requirements of the school system. So yes, it's very good news, and we will obviously take every single penny, because every year we feel that we're not necessarily getting our fair share in terms of the needs that we have, but we need to wait for the details and see how that's going to alleviate us.
If you get Kerwin money for operations, do you have to raise your own school budget to either match or to supplement that?
Usually it depends on how that's going to be structured. Obviously we have a maintenance of effort law, which means, of course, that every time we add to the budget, that becomes then the base, the floor, if you will, for next year. So it will depend on how this is going to be structured, and it's possible.
Politically, if you don't get the transportation right and you don't get the school system right, that undermines your economic opportunities.
It totally does, and again, I mean, this can be for another show, but that was the impetus for the decision that we made in 2016 to raise the property tax and the recordation tax. Because, I mean, we were very cognizant of the notion that the school system really needed to cut class sizes, and because that is definitely connected with economic development. The school system in Montgomery County is one that draws folks to decide to move to the county. And once you let a school system begin to erode, it's very difficult to bring that back, no matter how much money you throw at it. So that was a pivotal moment. But you're absolutely right. I mean, this is the job that we have right now, is to, again, take all of the assets that we already have in place in the county and take that to the next level. And I said yesterday at Committee for Montgomery, my goal is to work hand in hand with my colleagues to make Montgomery County very business friendly. We have to do that.
We only have less than a minute left, but last year the council unanimously adopted the creation of a so-called equity policy when it comes to schools. What does that actually mean?
Actually, it's not for schools, and it was actually a resolution to affirm our commitment to the adoption of a piece of legislation. So this resolution was for us to be on record, and I've led this effort. We will start in January this work. My goal is to spend the whole year, 2019, being very deliberative in this work in order to end up in the fall with a piece of legislation that will establish an equity policy in the county government and
across the board.
Okay.
We hope that the school system will come and cooperate with us and work together, but that would be a school board decision. But this is for county government specifically.
Nancy Navarro is the Montgomery County Council President. Once again, congratulations, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Today's Politics Hour was produced by Mark Gunnery. Coming up on Monday's show, a group of Prince George's County police officers have sued their department, alleging discrimination against Black and Hispanic officers. Plus, it's the season of giving. How are local nonprofits meeting the outpouring of volunteers and donations? What do they actually need? Time? Money? Gifts? We'll discuss it all Monday at noon. Until then, thank you for listening. I'm Kojo Namdi.